Hi everyone. So there is I guess it's a new term or a fairly recent term called deconstruction or deconstructing. And it's particularly used talking about people who come from a Christian background, especially evangelical, but it can apply to other forms of Christianity. People who spent a significant portion of their life, maybe grew up in it, become adults, and then start realizing that maybe not everything I taught was correct or true or even beneficial. And so the process of deconstructing is looking closely at what we believe and what we've been taught and evaluating whether it's true, whether it's beneficial, and whether or not it really upholds values that we find useful or right in our adult lives. So this seems to be particularly prevalent with millennials and some of the older Gen Z people. So I would say that I fall into this category. So the reason I'm thinking about this today is I'm driving a lot, and I watched this video by this lady named Christy Burke, and she has some really great content on YouTube. So she is, I believe now, she says she's an atheist, or at the very least, she doesn't believe in Christianity anymore. I don't see eye to eye with her on everything, but I find her content very useful. So she is somebody who grew up in evangelicalism, very much like I did, only from a younger age. I didn't become a Christian until I was 15. I wasn't raised in a Christian home. That was something, I found that on my own. That, like, my parents and my family had nothing to do with becoming an evangelical Christian. But for her, it was different. But anyway, I was watching this video, I think it was from like 4 or 5 months ago, where she talks about John MacArthur. And John MacArthur, if you don't know who he is, he's a very well-known and influential evangelical preacher. And many years ago, I thought the guy was pretty great. I really liked him. And then he started doing some weird stuff. He started saying things like, you can take the mark of the beast and still be saved, which, if you read the book of Revelation, that's totally, like, it's very clear that's not a possibility if you take the book of Revelation literally. The other thing was, when COVID hit, he went completely off the rails. Like, this guy, he was not only putting people at risk, he was doing some very risky things in terms of public health, but he was actively mocking and agitating the local government. In a time when public safety was at risk, the guy was just, I don't even know what the right word is. Definitely a rebel, and not in a good way. Like, he wasn't fighting for anything good. He was fighting for the right to hurt people, harm people, put them at risk. And I didn't feel that was a very Christian thing to do. Anyway, so Christy Burke, she has this video, she's talking about deconstruction and what John MacArthur says about deconstruction. So she goes through segments of his video, she comments on it. So anyway, it got me thinking about it and, my own experiences with deconstruction. Now, deconstruction doesn't mean that you stop being a Christian. Some people do. Some people don't. I have not. I would say I still believe in Jesus, and I would even say I believe in him more authentically now than I used to, but deconstruction doesn't mean that you have walked away from the faith. Some people do. That's an outcome that happens. It simply means that you're taking things piece by piece and looking at everything very carefully. So long story short, John MacArthur had a lot of negative things to say about deconstruction. And it got me thinking about a story from, it's actually in all four Gospels, but I'm going to look at the story in Matthew 26. So I'm going to title this something like, the Deconstruction of Peter, a very contemporary story. So Peter was a lot like me. He was a lot like this Christy Burke, that he was sure that he would follow Jesus no matter what. That he wouldn't question anything, that he was diehard. And that there was no questioning his dedication to Jesus. Nothing would make him question Jesus. So I'll read this real quick. So this comes from Matthew 26. It starts in, we'll start in verse 31 and we'll go through verse 35. Then Jesus said to them, the disciples there on the Mount of Olives, "You will all fall away because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." So this is talking about he's going to be crucified. "But after I've been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." So that's talking about the resurrection. "But Peter replied to him, Even if they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Never. Very emphatic. "And Jesus said to him, Truly I say to you that this very night, because before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said to him, Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." All the disciples said the same thing as well. They were all sure of it. They were all sure, I'm never going to question anything. I'm not going to deny you. Nothing could ever cause me to even have a doubt. And of course, if you've read the Gospels, you know that they all left him. They all denied him. And Peter, in particular, denied him 3 times. And then the rooster crowed and that whole thing. You can read it in the Gospels. But Peter had his moment of doubt. This is where Peter's deconstruction happens. This is where Peter begins to question things. He's not so sure anymore, because things are getting real and things aren't going the way he thought they would based on what he had been taught. So I'm going to go ahead and move to John chapter 21. So this is after the resurrection. I want to give a little bit of context to what was happening with Peter and the other disciples. There was a movement at the time called the Zealots. And even though Peter and most of the disciples were not officially Zealots, the philosophy of the Zealots could be seen in how they reacted to things. So the Zealots were people who, they really thought that a Jewish Messiah was going to come, and that Jewish Messiah would become king and overthrow the Romans and establish a new era of righteous rule, and set the Jews free from the rule of the Romans. And when Jesus was crucified, when he was arrested and ultimately crucified, the disciples were, what's the right word? Their whole world fell apart. Their whole concept of how this is going to play out was turned on its head. Because this isn't what they were expecting. They thought this guy's going to be king. He's going to establish a new kingdom and overthrow the Romans, and we're finally going to have heaven on earth. That's what they were expecting, basically. So Jesus is crucified. He gets resurrected. Some of the people had seen him, but Peter and some of these other guys hadn't seen him yet. So what happens? Well, Peter was a fisherman, and so were some of the other disciples. Before Jesus came and called them, these guys were fishermen. And so what happened after Jesus was crucified, in between him being crucified and them seeing him resurrected, they started to doubt everything. And they said, well, I guess let's just go back to fishing, because I don't know what to do now. This guy's dead. He's gone. I guess we go back to fishing. Okay, so we'll pick this up in John chapter 21. After these things, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, that's Peter, Thomas, who is called Didymus, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the two sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon said to them, I'm going fishing. May as well, let's just go back to fishing. It's what I used to do. They said to him, we are also coming with you. Well, I guess we may as well do the same thing. Let's all go. Nothing else to do. The Jesus guy, who knows what happened to him? He's dead. They went out and got into a boat, and that night they caught nothing. So they fished all night, and they didn't catch anything. But when the day was now breaking, Jesus stood on the beach, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. So they didn't recognize him. He didn't look like they thought he would. So Jesus said to them, children, do you have any fish to eat? And they answered him, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will find the fish. So they cast it, and they were not able to haul it in because of the great quantity of fish. So it's too much to even pull in, and it's too heavy. Therefore the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work. It was typical to fish naked because it was a nasty, dirty job, so they didn't want to ruin their clothes. And he threw himself into the sea and began swimming. But the other disciples came in a little boat, for they were not far from the land, but about 200 cubits away, dragging the net full of fish. So when they got on the land, they saw a charcoal fire already made, and fish placed on it, and bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish which you have now caught. So Simon Peter went up and hauled the net to land, the same net they couldn't haul in the boat. Now he can pull it in because he sees Jesus and knows that it's him. Recognizes him. Full of large fish, 153 in all, and although there were so many, the net was not torn. So I'm going to stop there. I want to talk a little bit about my own experience with deconstruction. When COVID hit, well, actually, I should even back up a little bit. From about 2017, 2018 onward, I started having a sense of something's not right. And it was when I started seeing a lot of political activity with the church, with Christian churches. I was never big into politics. I didn't feel that it was something that Christians should really be involved in. I didn't think that religion and politics mixed. And when I started seeing Christians and churches getting heavily involved in politics and trying to change the world into some kind of a I don't even know what the right word is, but what I was seeing, the definition of it, is Christian nationalism. I didn't know what it was at the time. I hadn't really heard that word, but that's what it was. It's what I was seeing, and that's what I it's like, this doesn't seem right. Christian nationalism is essentially what the Zealots were into. Same basic idea, just a different time frame and with different people involved. So you had all these people that were like, we need to make this a Christian nation, and we need to have Jesus rule over our nation, all this stuff. And they were trying to do the same thing that Judas and Peter and all these guys wanted to do, and were expecting to happen. They were expecting that we're going to win elections, our people are going to win, and we're going to make this a Christian nation, and God's going to rule on the throne here. Which totally wasn't what Jesus was planning on doing in the Gospels and in that time period. And it's totally not what we're supposed to be doing today. And even at that time, I recognized it, and it didn't feel right, and something is wrong here. So I was starting to have my doubts, and then in 2020, when COVID hit, several things happened. One, the stuff with churches not caring about public health and actively putting people at risk horrified me. I thought, this is the furthest thing from Christianity that I could even fathom. Like, love your neighbors yourself? Hello? Like, why is this not registering with people as something that's like antithetical to Christianity? Some other things were personal. My wife had cancer. She was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in late 2020, and we had 6 kids, and our youngest was not even 2 yet at the time. And people were telling my wife, Christian people, don't seek treatment. Don't do chemo, don't have surgery, don't do anything. God is greater than cancer. Pray the cancer away. Now, we have 6 kids, and I love my wife very much. And to hear people telling her, don't care about your life, risk it all. Don't get treatment. Let the cancer ravage your body and kill you. I couldn't believe my ears. I could not believe my ears that these were people that up until that time I had trusted and felt were friends. They were trying to kill my wife. That's exactly how I view it. These people were going to kill my wife. And just let the cancer eat your body and kill you. Don't worry about your kids having a mother to grow up with. Don't worry about, me having a wife. Don't worry about the pain and the sorrow and the anguish that we're all going to experience as we watch you die from this. So that was really eye-opening. Christians. Then, after she went ahead and got surgery against their advice, it was like 6 or 8 weeks later, she started chemo. She recovered from the surgery, and then it was time for chemotherapy. And, if you don't know anything about chemotherapy tends to compromise your immune system. So when you're on chemotherapy, you want to be really careful about getting sick. And, and this is right in the heart of the pandemic. And these people refused to wear masks around her, and would even mock her and mock me and mock our kids if we wore masks, and or suggested that other people wear masks around her and us, because we didn't want to get sick and give it to her. And this just astonished me. I was like, whoa. Like, first the thing with the surgery and telling her not to even seek treatment at all. But now that she has a compromised immune system, you people don't even want to take the most basic precautions to prevent a virus, which at the time was sweeping the world, from ravaging her and possibly killing her. And they all quoted Bible verses to try to justify this stuff. And I thought, all this stuff that I've been seeing, they all had Bible verses to try to back it up and to try to justify it. But I thought, this can't be the Christianity that I believe in. This can't be the outcome of believing in the same Jesus that I believe in. And so that was really that was the start of the whole deconstruction thing for me. Was I'd been having doubts for a couple years, 2 or 3 years at that time, about the things I'd been seeing politically. But then COVID hit, my wife got cancer, and that was just like, my whole concept of the world and Christianity and faith and how we live our lives as Christians all got just shattered. And so that's kind of when I just felt lost. I was like, am I even a Christian anymore? Like, do I even believe in Jesus anymore? Because I don't believe in his people. I don't believe in churches. I don't believe in what they're doing. And I don't believe in the people around here and what they're doing. So, I had my Peter moment. I had this time where I didn't know what to think. And ultimately, I did end up being convinced that Jesus is still important to me, and I still believe in him. But along the way, I met a lot of different people that I used to never associate with. Atheists, Buddhists, gay people, lesbians, other trans people like myself, and that's a whole other part of the story. A lot of people, in quite a few of them, aside from the atheists and the Buddhists, quite a few of them said, I really want to believe in Jesus, but I don't feel like I'm allowed to. I've been to churches that told me, well, you're gay, or you're a lesbian, or you're trans, or you're this, or you're that. You're not qualified. You don't get to believe in Jesus. And that started me thinking and searching. And a couple different people played a role in resolving that. One was Pastor Mark Wingfield. He's a Southern Baptist pastor from Texas who had written some stuff about transgender people, and he got some flack for it, but he was right. And Kathy Baldock. And she has some fantastic stuff. If you ever want to read her book, I think it's Crossing the Bridges Canyon or something like that. Anyway, you can look her up online. So she's got some stuff about how the word homosexual ended up in the modern Bible, the modern English Bible. And it happened in 1946. So anyway, that whole thing changed my mind about a lot of things. Not just homosexuality, but the way that modern culture, contemporary culture, looks at sociological issues and how they come to the conclusions they come to. So kind of how, when Peter was doubting, and so are the other guys with him, at first they didn't even recognize Jesus. Standing there on the shore, he's looking right at him, and they don't recognize him. He's even talking to them, and they don't recognize him, after they'd spent 3 years with him. And I kind of came out of it feeling like I never really saw who Jesus was until that point. Like, I didn't understand what he was really about and what it meant for me, and how I was supposed to be as a person who believed in him until that point. That Christianity It's not a bunch of rules. It's not a bunch of regulations. It's not a list of who's qualified and who's not. That it really and truly is love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. And I came away with such a different perspective on everything because of those experiences. And this is where I say that John MacArthur is, I don't want to say fatally incorrect, because I don't think anybody's going to die because of it, but catastrophically incorrect. Deconstruction, I think, is a good thing. I think it is one of the best things as a cultural trend within the church to have happened in the last several hundred years. That people are coming to the realization that they believed way too many things blindly and without proper investigation. And now they really want to get to the bottom of everything and find out what's true, what's really actually true, and what does